This is Rising Phoenix Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. This podcast is for men struggling with an unwanted divorce. I interview experts on divorce, mental health, and I provide insights gained from my own divorce journey. You are not alone. Join me. Joining me today is Steph McFarland. Steph, let's just jump right into this and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a certified teacher, but the reason I'm here today talking to you is because of my master's thesis that I wrote about boys and education and my concerns about society not allowing them space to express the full gamut of human emotions or teaching them emotional regulation. And by extension, I also interviewed a number of adult men who had similar experiences as children. So I am out to spread the word and make societal change.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I think the first question, at least for me, that came to mind is like, especially when I see sort of females that are in this space, the question that I always come to is why. So
Why?
why did you decide for that to be, and it's not a, I'm not making any negative assumptions, but I'm just genuinely curious, like, why did you choose to sort of wade into these, I don't want to say shark infested because that would be wrong, but these tricky waters?
No, sure, we'll call it that. It's weird. It's weird. I will own that. But there is a story behind it.
Sure.
First and foremost, I'm a mother of a boy.
Ah,
And when you look at your boy and you notice that he doesn't fit the mold, you realize that either he has to start shifting, or perhaps we could shift the way that society thinks, especially if it's for the positive. So that's definitely reason one, and probably my biggest purpose is because of my son and bringing him up as a single mother. The second reason is actually tied into my two divorces. When you have a divorce, you have two options. You can either play the blame game or focus more on yourself and look at the ownership component. And I realized that between the two divorces, and they're great men, but there were some trends and there were some things that I did that weren't great, things that I misunderstood. And so I thought, okay, if I can approach men from more of an academic perspective and come from a space of understanding, perhaps there's something here that can be learned. So I would say that. And also I have many male friends, and I'm a daughter and a sister, and men and women coexist all the time. And I wanted to get to the bottom of what I was doing wrong.
So I have a very good friend who says that he doesn't know a woman in his life that takes ownership for anything that they do wrong.
You should introduce us.
I am definitely going to send him this podcast. And I tell him, I say, yeah, I don't know any either, but I don't know all women. Like, I don't know all of them. They don't all talk to me. So all of them is, I don't know, but I do think that it is refreshing. And that aside, that's a joke. I'm sure there are plenty of women that do. It's a joke. But when I see, folks like you, that are playing this space, typically what I feel I see is pandering to almost like telling men like, oh, you don't do anything wrong. You're so shit on. Everyone hates you. And it just feels so pandering. Yours doesn't feel that way. Like when I read your content, I don't feel like you're pandering. I feel like you have a genuine dog in the fight because I kind of knew that you had a son, but now that you spoke about it, that it makes even much more sense, right? That so you're not only you're advocating, but it's coming from a place of purity, and you have this academic approach to it, which I think is amazing. But you said something that and I don't normally talk so much. I'm just excited. You
No, I
said
think
something.
that's great.
You said something that was it kind of struck me, and that was that and I may be butchering it, but your son is living in a way, or maybe presenting in a way. I'm definitely paraphrasing and butchering it, but in a way that was different than from other boys. Is that because I think that you said that essentially, and if not, correct me. And is
Yeah.
that because you have a female perspective, you're raising him differently, or because you have this knowledge, you're raising him differently?
Yes, all of the above. So, if I can share some of my research, actually,
Yes, please.
one of the studies that just absolutely floored me was the fact that boy infants are typically more emotive than girl infants are. And mothers tend to respond to girl infants in a different way than we do the boys. And then that kind of follows along as we raise our boys. It's like there's a certain lack of empathy, or there was even a story Terry Real shared in one of his books where he said, my son was complaining about his skates and I just ignored him. I was like, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. Go take care of it. But he's like, if it had been my daughter, I would have listened to that. So couple that with our infant boys being a lot more emotive. And honestly, they are a little bit more fragile. And I don't mean that in a negative way, like to downplay or just physically, like that's just what it is. And so I was looking at this, and I also have a daughter, and it very much rang true where there's a sensitivity to my son at similar ages that just didn't match up with my daughter. And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't confirming my social upbringing and expectations of what this boy is supposed to be. And so that's when I was like, okay, let's flip this upside down and think about, when he's crying more often than she does, or he's more readily to apologize to me, or just this intensity of a sensitivity, I had to start looking at some things.
It makes me wonder, is there, maybe I'm thinking too deep on this, but is it a societal thing, right? The way that you react to mothers normally react to sons versus daughters. Is that due to societal shaping, or is there some kind of weird, like, I don't know, maybe I'm completely out of my fucking
nature
mind.
Versus nurture. Keep going. I love where you're going.
Well, I think there's a part of me going, there's been some abuse of men in the history of the world. Let's be honest, right?
Sure. Yep.
Right. And is there a slight little resentment that has play in this? Like, in other words, there was a period of time where men were definitely more abusive. I think it's definitely gotten better, but I think that's very true, right? It was normal to get beaten. I don't know the numbers, and fucking forgive me, but I just wonder if there's like sort of like a resentment piece to this reaction to male versus female babies, or am I just fucking overthinking, which is what I tend to do?
I don't think you are. Yeah, I'll comment to that. Bell Hooks actually talks about that, and it was really hard for me to swallow as I was reading her book. Now it's going to escape me now that we're talking it, but anyway, she has a book talking about masculinity, and in that book, she talks about how women do have some sort of domineering tendencies over children. And so it's like, if you cannot look at that as a woman, is it subconscious? Maybe. Does it happen? Well, I don't think it would be fair to say it never happens.
Right.
Does it always happen? Probably not, but it is something to be at least aware of, so that we're not perpetuating patterns.
Well, and that's the key, right? Being aware of. I think that's so fucking difficult in life in general. Okay, let's shift a little bit, because you mentioned masculinity, and I have a hard time sometimes defining what that even is, and then defining what does it mean to be a man. But let's start with, maybe it sounds basic, but what is masculinity?
I get asked this a lot, actually. And I would love your take on it when I'm finished, because as a woman, and this is, I think, another reason why my content resonates with people, I try very hard to stay in my lane, right? For me, this woman to come on here and be like, oh, this is masculinity. So I would love your comment at the end of this.
Sure.
But there's actually something called the gender role paradigm that Ronald Levant talks about in many of his books. And essentially it's men and women. There's a paradigm of traditional versus non-traditional expressions of what our gender is. So, and this is in reference to straight gender, and not that, homosexuality isn't a part of this, but in terms of a straight gender expression of a male gender, it's going to be a bell curve. Most people are somewhere in between. There are people who are much more intense in their expression, and that's okay, as long as there's no harm towards others. There are people who love crocheting, and I dare say maybe even cross-dress, and maybe that's not my thing or my partner's things, but they can be straight and still do, you know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about extremes here, but most people are somewhere in between. So what it boils down to is this idea of alignment and authenticity, being who you are and playing a little bit with what's socially acceptable and what's not, and still being yourself and not. And I think that's a dance that everybody plays.
Yeah.
But as you are, that is masculinity, right? And maybe that sounds like a washout answer, but it's really not, because we're all quite different. The second thing that I would like to bring up is, again, bell hooks and Terry Real, quote, a Maasai African warrior. And he talks again about this spectrum where it's like, you have to be able to be a warrior and protect, but you also have to be able to come home and be tender with your wife and children. And a true healthy masculine man knows where and when to use the entire spectrum and how to behave in each of those, while also not causing, again, harm, right? No harm unless you're being threatened, right? And those are the two things that I've kind of clung to that make the most sense to me. But I'd love your opinion.
Yeah. I don't, for me, I feel like it's so hard to define, because I was interviewing someone this morning, and his answer was, he gave me a list of things, and I was like, well, I don't see anything in there that's male. Like, it's like, community, communication, vulnerability. And I'm like, I'm not saying he was wrong, but I'm like, well, but where is the male component of that? Because whatever that list that we just went through, I could see that women could do the same thing. He said, well, here's the thing: to be a good man, to be a masculine man, it's the same thing as being a good human. Like, there isn't anything that is specifically male that you would want to focus on, because then you're going to listen people, right? To your point, it's a spectrum, right? And he basically came to, it's what do you define it as? And I think that's the right answer, but it's not the easy answer, which makes it feel like there's a vacuum, right? So, but let me answer your question. For me, it feels like ownership, like that it's my, whatever it is, it's mine. Let me, if it's my emotion, let me feel it and handle it and process it in a healthy way. If it's my problem, let me deal with it and work through it in a healthy way, with the help of others sometimes. Again, talk about the community piece of it. So that to me is one thing that I always sit with, is just ownership. And someone said to me once, like, well, isn't that the same thing for women? I said, I know I'm not a woman. I don't know. I mean,
I
maybe.
agree with you. Yeah, I think that'd be great.
I don't know. I mean, I would hope that they have ownership as well, but I feel like that's a component of masculinity. But I do think that it's harder to answer today, because you mentioned something like a warrior, right? We're not fighting any real wars right now. I mean, obviously Ukraine and Russia, but I'm in America, so I can't speak to that. I'm not there, and I did serve, but I never seen a sniffed combat. It was before 9/11. There was this peacetime. So, but that component, that warrior component, that sort of yeah, fighting, a purpose. I think it's sort of been taken a little bit. Obviously, if you're not a soldier, or if you're not in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, then that component of warrior isn't up front to the forefront. Being the breadwinner is something that's been sort of, I don't want to say taken, but is lessened, right? There's women are in the workforce, clearly, and then some women that make more. And so I feel like a lot of the traditional things have been taken from men, and there's a vacuum that isn't easily answered by truth. It can easily be answered by bullshit, like red pill manosphere. The right. The answer is, it's women's fault. That's why you don't, right. And so I don't know that there's. I think the answer is that it's nuanced, then, and that it is up to the individual. But that's a lot. That doesn't feel like that doesn't resonate for some reason as much as you need to be a tough guy and man up, and it's not your fault, it's women's fault. I feel like that's unfortunately what has been sort of sucked up by the vacuum of the reduction of these standard roles.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, I had, there's a lot there.
I know.
I'm
That's why
trying
I
to
couldn't.
think the best way to say it. It's always easier to blame.
1,000%.
And, in any sort of circumstance, honestly, what's coming up to me too is like the whole race issue. Like, that's easy to take blame, and what,
100%.
pick our issue.
Sure.
And when it comes to men and women, My question would be, how do we look to the future and how do we become united? What
Mm,
is that golden pill instead, since we don't want to be red pill,
right.
right? What is that piece and that component?
Yeah.
And this might not answer your question directly, but honestly, what my content talks a lot about is men coming back to be able to be vulnerable with
Hmm.
the right people at the right place and time. And what people will misinterpret what I'm saying is they're like, well, you just, you want men to feel their emotions and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, yeah, but I also want men to regulate, and we're not giving our vulnerability to everybody.
Right.
That's not emotionally sound.
Mm,
And when we build relationships, man to man is important,
hmm.
women to women is important, and just community in general. Like, I don't understand why it has to be men against women. So I don't think I'm
Yeah.
answering your question directly because I'm still chewing it around as a
Sure.
person. And it's like, I don't operate that way as a human.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
hard for me to even speak to it.
Well, and I think it's sort of the, I don't want to call myself simplistic, but I'm a simple fellow. Like it's a simplistic view of the world. Like what bucket do I put this thing? What is this thing? What is, it define it so I don't have to fucking think about it because I have got 10 million things to think about. And so I think we try to make it simplistic, and people do, right? Red pill would blame all women, right? That's easy, and that does fill that vacuum. But yeah, I agree that there's no easy answer. I say this all the time. I don't have a podcast episode on brushing your teeth. Like we pretty much have that one down, right? It's pretty simple, right? You just fucking the tube and the toothpaste but this stuff is complex. There's no easy answer. But I do think and the sad part is that it does get filled by simplicity that allows people not to take accountability, not to be vulnerable, which I think is another key piece of all of this. And that's why it becomes so popular because you don't have to think about it. One of the things you mentioned on one of your posts was about the woman's responsibility around male vulnerability.
Mhm.
And I love that because I think there is some truth to it. Because I do think that when the standard societal view of men is not only viewed this way by men, it's also viewed this way by women. Not all, obviously. And so when they see an emotional man, there's more than a few that go, what the fuck is this? Like, this is not. And so, yes, men have work to do, but your point was women do as well, correct?
Very much so. It's interesting. I think you're making reference to the post that I had pinned that lays out what a woman can do
Yes.
to help men be vulnerable. And it's, if I can just touch on a few of them, it's
Sure.
important to really listen. I think women, since we're more brain, again, generalities here, but we're
Yeah.
more wired for, to speak. I have learned how precious silence is. And it's always a little bit longer than I think it's supposed to. And men just open right up. So if that's one thing that I could share with my sisters, it's like, just wait. Just, he wants to be open with you. Wait, and then wait even longer. So that's one thing. The other thing is this idea of empathy. Brene Brown talks about empathy and, talking and sharing feelings, but there's also something called action empathy. And that's in William Pollock's book. But essentially doing something with a man helps him to open up, helps him to feel love. Like there's something about moving the body for most men. And so it's like, don't have the expectation that we're just going to sit and talk about our feelings. Go play catch with him, go hike with him. Things will start to open up, and it's also having this openness. So a story actually I share too is when I was in my 20s, there was a guy that I adored. I wanted to date him, maybe even someday marry him if we had dated long enough. And he shared a very vulnerable story with me while he was living abroad in Germany. His parents divorced. And he started to share it with me and he cried. And I had hardcore secondhand embarrassment.
I bet. I can imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, that'd be foreign, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I changed the subject. I didn't know what to do because I didn't even know what to do with my own vulnerability.
Mm.
And later on, he called me up and he said, well, why? I said, why did you not want to be with me? And he said, well, because I couldn't be vulnerable to you. And that hit so hard. Even back, and this was 20 years ago, right? I'm 42 now. That was 20 years ago, and he was in his 20s, and how advanced he had become in his own emotional journey. But it's like, I did not understand, even just a touch of his arm, keeping eye contact and holding that space, even though I was a little bit uncomfortable. Some of the most beautiful bonding experiences are found in that discomfort when we can hold space for that. And I can now, thank goodness, but this learning experience.
You're right. And so it's probably not a fair question, but like in terms of for a man to know that it's okay to be vulnerable with a partner or maybe prospective partner, like how do you know with I guess you got to test the waters, right? Like so this guy did and it didn't work out. Is that the sort of answer that or if you tell a man, you know, in order to find out if it can be vulnerable, you have to be vulnerable, right? There's no like real pretest. Like here's a quiz, you got to,
Yeah, I mean, and that's unfortunate, but I have found that it is kind of the truth. Like I have daily conversations with men. They're like, "Well, I was vulnerable to a woman and she didn't accept it, so I'm never doing that again." And it's like, okay, I mean, if that's your choice, I support you in that. However, if you never do it again, a step, and maybe don't give out your biggest vulnerable thing, right? There's a spectrum there, and it's a learning process. It's like test her ever so slightly, and then if she can hold that capacity, then you give her the big stuff.
yeah. I mean,
It's hard.
yeah. Well, I mean, you're not single, right?
No, no, I'm
Okay.
not married, but I'm not single. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, A, that sucks. I'll edit that out. But uh, B, it's really fucking hard to be single and to navigate these waters to figure these things out. Um, and I don't know how receptive do you think women are to vulnerability from men in general?
You know, I really think it's case by case. I don't have a number. I don't have a research number. I don't have a guess, and I wouldn't want to put out a number out there that's not accurate. Um, I do think it is a challenge because I have had conversations with a few women where they're like, okay, I need vulnerability, but I can't handle too much vulnerability. And there's actually, I'll share this too. There's a men's coach that I'm pretty good friends with, and he does men's work, and he's phenomenal. And his take is not every woman should or even can take that space, and that's why we need male to male friendships that have certain levels of vulnerability. So it's,
That
I
makes yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't not necessarily like don't go to women, but maybe not dump all of it on your partner, right? I think that's a mistake that some men make.
Yeah, because there's a fine line between vulnerability and trauma dumping or using your woman as a therapist, and that is not something that I advocate for. But also, therapy can be challenging for men because it's more of a female model. Let's sit around and talk about our feelings like that. That doesn't really match.
Right.
So something else that I suggest and advocate for is okay, go find a men's coach
Right.
or look at other healing modalities. I mean, those are becoming more and more acceptable. Like I will be a certified hypnotherapist in a month because people are coming to me. They're like, okay, well, what do I do? And it's like, okay, we'll find a coach, a therapist, a somebody that can be maybe content free and has a different approach to working through your feelings. Maybe it's a somatic thing. There's lots of options out there, and people just need to do a tiny bit of looking into things and research.
Yeah, I mean, therapy is one of the things that I advocate for. A good therapist, which again is the same as
Of
saying
course.
find a good girlfriend. Like that was
Good luck.
yeah, they're all taken. Damn it. Um, but I think it also when I say that it's also don't settle for the first one, right? Like you can go to a therapist and it'd be an amazing experience. But back to your point, it's sort of about, I was vulnerable to this woman. I'm never doing it again. You can go to a therapist and it sucked. It doesn't mean you keep looking, keep going, because I think there is value in the process, even if it's to find out what may work. Like I'm currently with an internal family systems therapist, and I fucking love
Great.
it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Amazing. Yeah.
fantastic. But one of the best things I ever did. Because I think we are complex people, and I think there are many parts to us, and that's sort of what this modality emphasizes. But I think and maybe you have some research on this, or at least an opinion. I feel like it's shifting in terms of men seeking therapy or talking about therapy or considering it. Whereas, I don't know, 20 years ago for sure, like that was why the hell would I do that's for women and like broke crazy people or
Crazy
whatever.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the research did show that it is, and even now, even though it is changing, there is a tendency for men to seek out that help less. And again, is that a societal thing, right? Is there a bias? Well, if I go, I can't handle my own crap. I'm not man enough. I'm not strong enough to do this. And it's like we have to remember we don't heal in isolation. So whoever that person is, and just to speak to your, finding a good therapist, I went through 7
oh
until I
shit.
found the one I'm with now. And it is a male therapist. He is fantastic. So don't
Oh
give up.
wow. Wow, that's whoa. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about healthy masculinity in your eyes as a woman. What does that look like to you? I know we kind of talked about this and sort of what do you see as a man, but like I'm talking about specific positive things that you see as a woman that you do find attractive and appreciate about men.
The Gottmans talk about in partnership a lot of good quality things that happen. And I think that a man who is invested in family, actually, and this is a new thing, right? Our parents' generation, dad did dad things, mom did mom things, and it's just not that way anymore.
Right.
So it's like a man who is a true partner, I think is a huge plus.
Hmm.
I think a man who also has the capability to connect with a woman emotionally, that's honestly the women that, because I talk to a lot of women too, and women know what I do, and have a wonderful group of female friends. But the biggest complaint that I hear from them is men still are not emotionally connecting with them. And what's ironic to me, and I don't have a lot of this research base, but that then does affect intimacy,
Of course.
right? So it's like, okay, is my man, does he have my back emotionally? Can I tell him things? Can I share things with him? Will he be emotionally available? Can I hold his heart? And can he hear my voice? Right? Women have to be heard. When our voice is silenced, that is not effective. And when we feel heard, we will absolutely hold a man's heart. And that's also from Terrence Real. That one line, I was like, oh my gosh, if we can just have that, that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, I frown because I was not able to do that. I failed at that. Um, yeah. I mean, it is what it is at this point, but it's why I do what I do, at least partially, right? Is to learn myself, to try and be better, to be able to hold space, to be able to deal with my own emotions, so I can deal with anyone else's, right? And I think I mean, there's many layers to this, but that's absolutely one of the problems. Is for me was I don't know if it's changed. I sure as fuck hope so, but I wasn't able to hear her emotion. I don't want emotions. What are you crying for? It just if you don't like the job, just fucking quit. You know what I mean? Like instead of like just listening and empathizing, like I couldn't do it. So it
It's,
yeah.
don't be too hard on yourself, though. I have to cut you off because here's the hard part, right? How can we, and women can be mad at you for that, but I've taken the opposite approach. It's like, how can we expect you to? How can we expect you to when, as a teenager, a child, even a baby, according to my research, we're asking you to bottle that, and now you're supposed to hold space for me? So it's
Well,
like that's why I take that. Go ahead, sorry.
no, you're right. Well, and this is where I think we as men are obligated to fix it because you can't fix it for us. You can help us, right? You can support us, right? But it's up to us. That's why I don't like the victimization of men. I don't like okay, yeah, we were victims of the societal circumstances, but how the fuck do we not know now, right? Now we know. Let's fix it. I mean, easier said than done. I totally get that. But you mentioned something that I wrote down. I wrote a lot. I scribble. True partner. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
I think it's somebody who is invested in having their own purpose, being invested in my purpose, being invested in the children, and also the Gottmans talk about taking influence. And that's a two-way street too. Women sometimes don't like to take influence either.
Right.
But according to their research, people who take influence from their partners, and I'm not talking criticism, right? We got to be careful because there's a fine line there and a lot of us
Yeah.
flirt with it. When there's something that needs legitimate adjusting so that we feel more connected, or legitimate adjusting so we feel more, I don't know, our needs, right? Our partner isn't going to meet every single one of our needs, but when we throw out a few and we're like, hey, could you shift this because this is the need I have and this is how you can help me? Is that something that is done? And that is huge, absolutely huge, that I very much look for in people that I'm with.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any of these skills. I think I do. I mean, I've worked very hard. It's been 6 years. I've worked very hard, but I've had zero success of testing these skills. So I hope so. But I don't really know. Do you think that it all sort of, I mean, obviously skills you got to learn, you got to be aware of, you got to be mindful, but does it still boil down to communication? Like even if you have some kind of skills around this stuff, like don't you need to be able to communicate with your partner to be able to talk about these things? Like isn't it is it so simplistic to say it, communication?
I think it's a little more complex than communication. I definitely think communication is a huge part of it, but also that emotional regulation.
Mm,
Because if you say something, right, being able to receive any sort of feedback that's going to elicit some sort of emotional response, right?
right.
And what do we do with that? Or when our kids misbehave, like that triggers childhood trauma like no else. And how do we remain regulated in that circumstance? So I would say regulation actually trumps communication, but
Mm.
communication is right there next to it.
What
In my-
yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. What do you have you found it in your current relationship? We don't have to get into too many details, but have you found that bears true for you as well? It's more about the regulation rather than the communication.
um, yes, actually. But again, communication it's like right
Yeah.
there. So I think looking at both of those things, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you went through two divorces, and you sounds like you took some accountability. Um, there's a couple questions there in terms of the struggle. Once you took accountability, was there a lot of regret and like beating yourself up? Like, because I think when you take accountability, there's this danger of taking it all, which I think if you get to a certain point, that's not necessarily bad for some reasons. But until you're strong enough, I feel like it can be dangerous to be like, yeah, it was all my fault. Because then the story is I'm such a terrible person. Like, did you struggle with that kind of a
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I am one of those personalities where I do take too much accountability in some circumstances and sometimes. And my first divorce, I was not in that space, believe it or not. I was actually in quite a bit of a blame space.
hmm,
And then it kind of pendulumed all the way over to it was all my fault. And then I have found this happy medium where it's like, no, he did some things, and
right,
so
right,
did I. And here's why even our childhoods actually created this storm of a perfect
hmm,
match in the worst way.
yeah,
So, there's not just accountability, but even awareness of our habits, what we do that might not be the best. Like it's hard to look at ourselves sometimes, but it's
oh
a skill.
yeah, no, that's a skill for sure. Did it take you a while to not be fucking scared out of your mind to get into another relationship
Um,
after the second one?
I hate answering that one, but no, because I'm the kind of person I probably got into relationships sooner than I should have,
Hmm.
uh, because I'm very social. I process outside as opposed to this is typical, not what am I trying to say? I have found through research and interviews that a lot of men are internal processors as opposed
Hmm.
to external. That's not everybody, not a blanket statement, but it is very
Right.
common. So for me, finding lots of friends, going on lots of dates, being in a relationship, that actually was sort of healing for me. If I knew what I know now going back, I probably still would have had relationships, but just smarter ones and fewer.
Hmm.
It's kind of a vulnerable response on my part, but that's a hard one to answer, and we all process things differently.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like I can't speak to how women handle divorce, especially the the dynamic of, who decided and all that kind of stuff. But I know for me, and I see it a lot with the guys that I work with and guys that are in the groups, a lot of us, me included, we dove into dating immediately, like and debauchery and just like we find out it doesn't help. It doesn't lead to any kind of positive outcomes, not only for yourself, because you sort of expect if I just find another person, then it'll do, So if we just find another mate, another partner, it was her, she was the issue, she was the problem, and then we find out, well, that doesn't lead to a happy relationship, right? And so I feel like that's a very dangerous thing for men to do, because then that's why the second divorces rates are higher and on and on and on and on, right? Because we don't take that accountability. But I don't know if women experience the same sort of thing where they're searching for the next partner immediately. It doesn't sound like you were doing that necessarily, but just trying to just be social. Is that true? Were you not like looking for your next husband, but you just wanted to just be around people?
Yeah, I think it depended on the day. And this is a complex thing because when you get divorced, your body goes into trauma mode, your brain goes into trauma mode, and you don't know up from down. So if I'm really being honest with myself, it wasn't the smartest. But I had a relationship where the man that I was with said, "You are divorced too soon," and it kind of knocked me back. I was like, "What?" And it was part of my path in doing what I have done. Right? I haven't gotten married. Right? There's not a
Right.
third marriage, and a relationship to me is different than a marriage.
Sure.
Being a boyfriend and girlfriend, because I feel like even relationships with the right intent can be healing. There's certain healing that we can do on our own and certain healing that has to be done in a partnership. And that's hard. And I hate that.
So you
you
bring
know?
up something that I've struggled with, and I don't think you're wrong, but I struggle with this because there's a part of me that says I need to heal myself. That's a me job. That's an inside job. That's a me thing, right? Um, and I don't want to outsource that to anyone. That's not fair to anyone, right? But as I go along through this and I see enough guys that have gone from divorce to new relationship and struggles in that relationship, there's a part of me that now does see it a little bit your way, where it's like, in order to completely heal, you need to have another relationship that is healing, if that makes any sense. But I said, it makes me so uncomfortable because again, I feel like you're outsourcing your healing.
I get what you're saying. Let me add this to your ideas. For me, when you're in a partnership, circumstances arise that you then have to say, okay, I'm going to come back over here and take care of it. So let me give you, for instance,
Sure.
and I have permission from my boyfriend to share this, right? My car broke down, and I really wanted him to come help me
Right.
because that he got to be my hero. I was frustrated, blah, 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 blah. And I shared this on my threads content too. But I didn't ask him to come because I felt like I was going to be an inconvenience because I had
Right.
been treated as such in different circumstances.
Okay.
After he didn't show up, he called a friend and they came and took care of me. Everything worked out, but he didn't show up. And I was like, I really wanted you to come. And he said, well, why didn't you just tell me? And I was like, well, because I just wanted you to want to come and be my hero. Right.
Right.
So there's this weird dynamic, and nobody was really wrong. Nobody was really right. But it was very evident in both of our reactions and responses of our previous traumas. And so it was like, oh, okay. So I did this for this reason. You did this for this reason. He said, next time, just tell me and I will come flying in with my cape. But I wouldn't have been able to look at that component of me had I not been in partnership.
Right. True. And I would say your growth is evident because you were able to express that rather than just hold that resentment, like
Exactly.
for months. Like, a fucking asshole didn't show up. Like
Right.
I
And had I
okay.
not done that healing part of me, like you were talking about
Right.
before I even got to the relationship, I wouldn't have known to do that.
Yeah. Steph, thanks so much for doing this. If people want to find you, your content, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I am most active on threads and I'm pretty engaged with my audience. So, if you need somebody to talk to, just comment on one of my posts and I will most likely comment back.
I can attest to the truth of that because that's how I got the interview. So the last question that I ask everybody is, what words of wisdom would you impart to a man just beginning his divorce journey?
It gets better. Find a friend who you can really trust that's male. Find a friend that you can really trust that's female. And find healing modalities that work for you. And know that you can step into being your best self.
I love it. Thanks, Steph. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you are feeling alone on this journey, please join our Discord server. Becoming a phoenix is not a solitary act. It is one achieved through community. Our Discord server is just that, a community of men fighting to survive, thrive, and rise from their divorce. Go to risingphoenixpodcast.com/Discord for information on how to join and what is contained in our Discord server. Please join us.